So, Set 12 is out on PB right now, and you're watching your favorite streamers playing it, but you have no idea what's going on. Don't worry, my friends, because I, Exterior, will teach you everything you need to know about Set 12. In this video, we're going to cover what's the gimmick of the set, new system changes, new traits, and some new unique units. Before we jump right into it, we should know the theme of this set, which is Magic and Mayhem, a fantasy-like magical setting where we have magical creatures such as dragons and magical scholars that help us fight alongside us. With that out of the way, now I can talk about the gimmick of this set, which is charms. What charms are is something that appears in your shop every 3 rolls that give your board or your shop power up. A similar mechanic that we had before was headliners, which is in set 10, and if you buy a unit, it would 2-star it, and it would give you a +1 trait for it. An example of a charm is all ones. What this charm does is, it turns your whole shop into 1-cost units, and this charm doesn't cost anything to buy at all, but there are some other charms that do cost gold, like Silver Guarded. This costs 2 gold to buy, and what it does is, it makes your whole board have an 8-second QSS. There are about 80 different charms in the game, and as we see here on screen, each charm do appear in different stages. Now we know what charms are, let's talk about the system changes they did to set 12. And one of the big changes they did is the back size, which is the amount of units in the pool. And for 1, 2, and 3 costs, it's all different, meaning that it's easier to 3-star now because there's more in the pool. But for 4 and 5 costs, it's still the same. It's just going to be as much as it was last set. One of the biggest changes they did this set is the mana bank. And this is a huge buff because if you exceed over the cap, the remaining leftover mana would go to the next cast. And what I mean by that is, in older sets, if the max mana is 50, and then you exceed up to 55 over 50, after that unit casts, it will still go back down to 0. But in set 12, if the unit cap is 50, and then you go up to 55, after that unit casts, the next cast will have at least 5 mana left. So that number will carry over, which is a really huge buff because this means that units are allowed to cast even more. And in all honesty, I can't really tell the difference. It looks the same to me, but it's a buff, so I'll take it. In set 12, they added more terms, and I would explain what they mean. For damage amp, it's just basically more damage. So for example, warriors, they gain omnivamp and more damage. And then durability, it's just basically damage reduction. For example, for vanguards, they gain 10% more durability, which is, damage reduction. Another big system changes they did is like certain items, such as needlessly big gem. And set 11 is basically if the holder is alive after 15 seconds, you gain like an ascension augment. But in set 12, it's different. For each second the unit is alive, you gain additional damage. So this is a pretty big change for this item. Another item that got a pretty big change is Spite. And what this item did in set 11 was, you put it on a unit, and if it died, it would shoot out like a splash AoE, and whatever units that got hit by it, they take extra damage. But in set 12 is different. Whoever holds this item gives the adjacent allies extra damage, and if the holder of the unit dies, it would stun everything around it. There are some minor changes in items, like for example, like Hextech Gunblade. It gives 2% less Omnivamp than it did set 11. It's something that is just so minor that doesn't really matter to explain. And also too, keep in mind that there could be other changes later down the line. This is just all we know for now. Now that we know the basics of set 12, let's talk about the new traits. Starting off with one of the best splash trait units in this set is Arcana. When you activate this synergy, it drops you a selector, and what the selector does is you put it on one of the units and they give you certain buffs, but in order to activate the buff, you have to meet certain conditions in order to do it. For example, if you have Ari selected, if you field any 3-star champions, you get more damage. For Hecarim's case, is the more items you have equipped, the more damage that unit gets. So basically saying you get buffs depending on certain requirements and conditions. Chrono. This synergy is actually very interesting because it gives you a lot of AP stats, and it gives you like certain bonuses. As you see here in the top left, you can read it for yourself. It adds more stats on top of each other, meaning that the more chronos you have on the board, the more stats you get. And as you see here on screen, if you have 4 chrono out, you freeze the board. Eldritch. After you lose a certain amount of HP, it summons a pet that helps you fight. The more Eldritch you have, the powerful the pet would be. As we see here on screen, we have 7 Eldritch, which summons Volibear. Fairy. When you activate your synergy, it drops you like a damage-like stacking item that you can use for your carries. And then the more fairies you have, you also get another tank item one, so you can use it for your tanks. And then the more fairies you put in after that, you get a radiant version of it. And only fairy units are the only ones that can hold these items, but if you have a fairy emblem that you put on a different unit, they can use the item too. Frost. This synergy is actually one of my favorites, and is actually pretty interesting because your Frost units gain extra damage, and on top of that, whatever units that you kill in battle, they become one of your soldiers. And then the more Frost units you have, the more soldiers you can summon. And then if you have enough Frost units, then the soldiers will explode on death. Honeymancy. When you activate this trait, it allows you to summon bees around the Honeymancy unit, and they do extra damage with it. But if that unit dies, then they will transfer at least one bee to a different Honeymancy unit. Essentially, this is like Laser Corps from set 9, if you remember that synergy. Portal. This synergy is probably going to be the strongest opener ever in this set, and what this synergy does is it opens a portal that throws out random stuff such as Jarvan flags that gives you attack speed, some bombs that you can do damage on, or even like biscuits that heal you, and so on. And then each of the portal units gain shields, and the more portals you throw out, the stronger the portal gets. Also, the more star levels you have, it also makes the portal even stronger. Essentially, it's like Story Weaver from last set. Sugarcraft. This synergy is something you should play off the beginning. The reason why, because it's a stacking synergy, and in order to stack, you have to have item components on your units. And then over time, you're able to hit certain thresholds to build one layer of cake. And then for each layers of cake, you gain bonus damage for your Sugarcraft units. And then on top of that, once you reach 7 layers, you gain bonus treats, meaning like extra gold and extra item components and so on. Essentially, it's like Arcade from set 10. Witchcraft. This synergy applies a curse on enemies. And as you see here on screen, there's like a ball that circles around the enemies. If the enemy with the curse dies, it transfers to a different enemy. And then the curses get stronger and stronger with the more witch units you have on the board. You can see for what it does on the top left. For the rest of the traits here, there's no point in showing visuals because it's pretty self-explanatory. Starting off with our tanks, which is Bastion, they each get armor and magic resist. And then Vanguard, they gain durability, which is a term we learned earlier, which is just damage reduction. And they also get a shield. For other frontline stuff, we got like Warriors, which is essentially just Omnivamp, an extra damage amp, which is just more damage. And then Shapeshifters, technically they're kind of tanks, but not really. But they do get more HP after cast. And then the second cast, they do something else depending on the unit. And then for our physical damage carries, we got is Pyro. What these units do is they gain extra attack speed for your board. And after they get a kill, they drop like tokens on the ground and you pick it up. Those tokens give Pyros more attack speed. And then we got Blasters, pretty self-explanatory. They just do extra damage. Multi-Strikers, they have a chance to have an extra attack. And then the more multi-strikers you have, the more damage they will do. And you got Hunters, where after a takedown, they gain more damage. And then Dragons, if you have 2 out, they have anti-heal. And if you have 3 out, their abilities upgrade, which is for Namzi, Shyvana, and Smolder. They gain basically healing on their ability technically. And then for our AP synergy, we got Incanter, which is for every time they cast, they gain more ability power. And then Mages, the more mages you have out, the more ability power they get. And they also cast their ability twice. Now for the unique units, we got is Wukong. And Wukong is a druid, and druid is technically just a synergy by itself with no other traits, and he also gets a powerful ability, and he increased stats. His ability also gains bonus damage with more armor and magic resist you get. And then for the Lysandra of this set is Morgana. She is a Bat Queen, and what this means is, if she gets a kill on an enemy, she has a chance to gain a clone of a 1-star variant of it. Next up, we got is Briar, and then what she does is, she drops a biscuit in your item slot, and if you feed it to her, you use up 3 of your actual HP to give her more damage and more HP. And you can keep buffing your Briar like this every round. When you place Xerath in the board, your chances of getting charms is even higher. When you place Nora on the board, she summons Yumi, that she can attach to anyone else on the board, or you can attach it to Nora herself, which allows you to get more AP, and if Nora dies, Yumi dies as well. And that is it for everything you need to know about set 12. If you have any questions or are confused about something, I'll try to answer my best in the comment section down below. Until then, I'll see you guys next time. Later.